welcome to the Jameel Rawls show. And currently we're discussing the music industry and the film industry. Now I have another channel where I just say Jameel show, the Jameel Rawls show. It's all me, but I have another channel where I go more in depth into the music industry. And over the years I've learned a lot about music. Matter of fact, one of the people I learned about music first was from my grandfather. Now he only listened to classical music. He played the piano. Mozart, Bach, Beethoven, Chopin, and so I grew up listening to a lot of classical music. So, now getting past that, he went through the Air Force and he got out and he flew for Transport Airlines. And he used to tell me he used to meet famous musicians all the time. He used to walk through first class and shake their hands and say, I'm captain, yada yada yada. You need anything? And so he'd meet famous people. Political people, all sorts of people. And I learned a lot from him about rock and roll. He didn't listen to rock and roll, but just hearing the stories of him meeting the famous people. Matter of fact, I'll tell one story before we get into that. Now, I met Muhammad Ali one time, and he came all the way to Muskegon Heights, Michigan. And I was a little boy. I went up to him to shake his hand, and he gave me a hug, right? And so I thought that was an incredible thing. I actually got to meet Muhammad Ali. My grandfather lived way out in the country, like hundreds of acres of property, way out in the country, like 400 and some acres of property, huge, gigantic, and nothing but all farms and all that stuff around. So I went way out. He had horses, all kinds of cool stuff. So I went out there to talk to him, and I explained to him. I was like, I met Muhammad Ali, and I thought I was going to get one over on him. And he said, yeah, I know him too. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you just met him today, right? I said, yeah. He said, I met him a few times. I used to fly him, and so that's the type of guy So it kind of made me a little bit like I was like, oh man, I thought I had something on him. But he used to tell me about rock and roll stars who used to go to jail all the time and stuff. And when you look at rock and roll in the 1950s, rock and roll was a lot more hardcore. You had guys like Johnny Cash who sang "Walk the Line." Who went to Folsom Prison, and Johnny Cash used to go play music at Folsom Prison, and Folsom Prison is one of the hardest prisons in the country. I mean, it was then and still is now, right? So he goes into Folsom Prison, and he starts drinking the water. And the people and the convicts there, you can imagine they dislike the water there, right? All the old drains and all that stuff. And so he took a glass of water, and he drank the water while he was giving a concert in the penitentiary there. And the whole crowd, you can watch it on YouTube now, Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison, and the whole crowd went wild. See, that's what rock and roll was like in the 50s. Rock and roll was like cutting edge. It was mean. People who listened to rock and roll stole cars and got into gang fights and stuff with bats and chains and stuff like that, like the Greasers and all that. And so rock and roll was something, really. For growing up in the 1950s, if you listen to rock and roll, you were considered tough, And so when the 1960s came into play, the music changed a lot. It got more into image and less about sound. The 1960s had some incredible music, wonderful rock and roll music, but it became more about image. Then by the 1980s, the digital sound came in, and rock and roll turned into more of a thing for like boy bands, like She Broke My Heart and all this stuff. It turned more into a thing for like, younger younger girls who like, younger guys and girls and stuff who little boy band type stuff. Like it turned into like NSYNC, NSYNC, where little boy groups go out and make all these girls cry and stuff at the concert. But rock and roll, So rock and roll lost its edge many years ago. But I used to sit there and listen to stories about these rock and roll artists, how these guys would go to jail all the time and get into fights at bars and stuff like that. And I used to listen to my grandfather tell me the stories about it. Like, wow, man, like these people are in and out of jail all the time and playing music in the penitentiary and stuff. I thought that was interesting. And when rap, I think that's why gangster rap what got so much appraisal from the middle class, especially the middle class Caucasian fans, is because rock and roll had come to an end the edge, the roughness of it had come to an end. And so I think when gangster rap came out, it kind of brought an edge back, even though younger middle class white guys living in the suburbs culturally are a lot different than the inner city blacks living in the inner city in the ghetto. The vibration was still the same, to be rough and rugged, you know. And so you can even listen to older country music where they talk about getting into shootouts and stuff, like Frankie Lane. Frankie Lane would talk about getting into shootouts and being wanted and all that stuff. And if you go back and you listen to an old song of Frankie Lane, he's saying the same thing. Snoop Dogg was talking about, or Tupac was Frankie Lane saying the same thing the gangster rappers were saying. It's just country music and rap. So now I noticed one thing in the 1980s, as far as black music goes, people who listen to black music, you know, the black audience, their focus was mainly on women. Most black people listened to women singers like Whitney Houston. If it was guys, you know, they listened to Bobby, you know, people listen to Bobby Brown, but the focus was mainly on women. And then around the mid 80s, you had guys like LL Cool J who came up, and rap stopped becoming more, rap was no longer an underground thing. People were coming up, you know, out of the woodwork and becoming more and more mainstream. But rap had really broken into the mainstream. Then, somewhere in the late 80s, the focus went off women as far as black entertainers go, and it went on young black men. And it focused on like Eazy-E, Ice Cube, NWA. Then in the early 90s, you had that movie Juice come out with Tupac Shakur. And Tupac Shakur took a gigantic, like out of nowhere, he just came out of nowhere. And as far as rap goes, he took the main focus for that period. Up until, you know, time of his death, even after his death, he took a focus. But, so that was part of how I grew up, listening to these stories about these famous rock and roll artists. And then you no longer heard, you know, after in the 1980s, you heard a rock and roll artist ODing and stuff like that. But the old way they came out, when they came out like violent and stuff in the 50s, all that jail stuff, it came to an end. Then the gangster rappers took that image. The gangster rappers became what the rock and roll artists used to be. I've been paying attention to the music industry for many years, and I speak to entertainers from the music industry. I've spoken to producers, film directors. I've spoken to a lot of people over the years, just doing research on the 60s and 70s, not really trying to get into the music industry. But, you know, I noticed that, and so, you know, that's one of my views on the music industry of gangster rap. And now that gangster rap the gangster rap culture has come to an end, now it's turned into more of a boy band type thing, skinny jeans, skateboards and stuff. The same phase rock and roll went through, the same phase rap music went through. And so that's something we're looking at when we look into the music industry. I got some stuff coming out on Kid and Play. Kid and Play was a group, a two-man crew, a duet. One was light-skinned, one was dark-skinned. Now, they represented rap music in the early 90s when you still had room for regular hip-hop. They were not gangster rappers, and they couldn't have made it any further than what they did. They made movies up until, I think, 95, 96, but their rap music, their hip-hop rap music couldn't make it any further because gangster rap took the main focus. Even rappers who did not come from the inner city or were not involved in drugs or gangs or anything like that, even they tried to pretend like they were gangster. They tried to pretend they had a gangster image just to make it in showbiz, not to actually be a gangster, just to survive showbiz. They wanted to have that image. So Kid and Play dropped out of the scene because they did not want to adopt the gangster rap image. They were more of a pro, you know, I'm sure a Caucasian audience at that time looking at them might have looked at it the same way they would looked at some gangster rappers, but in reality, they had a more pro-positive vibration. You know, Kid and Play, House Party 2, where it shows them going into college with Martin Lawrence, which is one of my favorite comedians, by the way. But they had a pro-positive image, going to school, getting good grades. You never seen them any type of guns or anything like that. That just wasn't them. Even in the movie Class Act, where again Kid and Play come back, and Kid talks about how he's anti-drugs and he doesn't promote drugs, and they put that right in the movies in the early '90s. Versus Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, Juice, that was showed the vicious lifestyle of guns and drugs and whatnot. Okay, so that ended for Kid and Play. Then you saw new groups come out like Criss Cross. And if you go back to the Source cover magazine, Kid and Play, Source magazine, you're going to see Kid and Play on the Source magazine. Kid got the basketball, play. He's fresh to death, but you can tell he's not into any he's not a street hoodlum though. And they got mainstream artists on the cover. Dre and Eazy-E, The Saga Continues, Digital Underground, Sons of Funk, MC Lyte, The Can You Win a Rhyme Fight, new music from Scarface, and so these guys are pro-positive, but they're on the cover of the Source, and you can see gangster rappers listed. Most people who were watching the music industry just didn't catch this stuff at the time, and most people don't go back and look now. Criss Cross. Criss Cross cover, Source magazine. It says school age blues rap's new generation is packing more than lunch. And it shows Criss Cross with the and rest in peace to, I think, Chris, I'm not sure if it was Chris or one of them passed away from cancer, I think. But so it shows them coming to school, and they got the old jail blue uniform on, and they got metal detectors and stuff. Their music wasn't necessarily their music, Criss Cross music wasn't really pro-violence, but the image they showed, they were a kid rap group, but the image they showed on the cover with them dressing like they're going to jail, compare that to Kid and Play. Kid and Play with a basketball having fun, to Criss Cross going to jail. Same thing happened to Tupac Shakur. I've talked about this in my metaphysical mentoring tapes about how Tupac Shakur got into the role of Juice, Bishop, and Juice. After he did the movie Juice playing Bishop, he then became... If you look at some interviews of Tupac Shakur before the movie Juice, he's mellow, he's quiet. You can tell he just came out of the Baltimore School of Arts. Intellectual, peaceful, his mother was a Black Panther, so he has more of like a pro-black type thing. Then after the movie Juice, his attitude changes. You see the Thug Life album, and you see the up until the All Eyes on Me, he hooks up with Suge Knight, and his whole image just went into 24/7 gangster mode, and went after Juice. But his character changed. So a lot of people changed their character. A lot of rappers changed their character in the early 90s. And then Criss Cross created a fad. Speaking of Criss Cross, they created a fad with their pants sagging. I remember that. I thought it looked kind of silly, but they started pairing their pants on backwards. Everybody started following. Then they had some t-shirts. I remember back around that time, if you went into a store, they had a t-shirt, and it was Bugs Bunny and the Tasmanian Devil. And Bugs Bunny and the Tasmanian Devil, they would have the baseball tops, the baseball jerseys, but their pants would be backwards on the t-shirt. And that was a famous t-shirt in that era. And so going into the music industry, I might as well spit a little bit of knowledge. Copyrights for artists in today's world, going into contracts and stuff in the music industry. You can't really sell music anymore through a major label unless you're doing concerts and shows, because nobody's really... people pay for the MP3s, but you're not really selling albums out of a store anymore. Some stores are bringing the vinyls back, but to be a mainstream artist, you're not going to make any money. You're not going to be selling tapes and CDs like you once were. The stage is where you're going to get your money at. If you want to become a rock and roll artist or a rapper, you're going to make your money off the stage, going to concerts and shows. No one's going to buy a tape cassette or a CD anymore. So I would say you can be your own manager, just like Lord. What's that guy's name? The young white dude, Slim Jesus. Let me look him up real quick. Slim Jesus was a white rapper. Slim Jesus was a white rapper. Slim Jesus took me by surprise. He had a record offer from Cash Money.
Fuck with savages, you a fuck boy, you can't hang. You can find me posted up on Frank Block with my fucking gang. You ain't really bout shit.
Slim Jesus. And then The Game was on. I remember the rapper The Game was talking about Slim Jesus too.
I fuck with savages, you a fuck boy, you can't hang. You can find me posted up on Frank Block with my fucking gang. You ain't really bout shit, stay out my spot, don't speak my name, or I pull up on your block at night wearing all black and let that 40 bang. I fucked your girl and I ain't even try it, that little hoe, she a fucking thought. Got her up the molly, now she rollin', all she good for is giving top. I got loud pack, I got school buses, hurry up fam, come and shop. I got a big 40 with a 30 clip and I call that bitch my fucking mom. I paid $350 for a Fendi belt and that double F, hold up my strap, a lot of y'all.
Now Slim Jesus, he took advantage of the current status of the music industry. The thing I like about Slim Jesus, he turned down his deal, but he had a good reason for it. He went on to promote shows. He promoted himself doing his own shows.
You won't get found right till you get caught in traffic at the wrong place at the wrong time.
He promoted himself in shows, and he was able to get himself at an angle that made sense for today's music, the music market. How much time? And before we go, I'm going to talk about copyrights. The Copyright Act of 1976 is the United States copyright law that remains primary basis of copyright law in the United States, as amended by several later enacted copyright provisions. So I encourage people to look that up for more information about music, copyrights, the copyright law of 1976 as far as the music industry goes.